Good morning or afternoon, everyone, wherever you are tuning in from. We're so excited to be presenting our webinar, Implementing a Fleet Crash Management Strategy. The webinar is brought to you by the National Road Safety Partnership Program, or NRSPP, in partnership with ARB Group and, of course, City of Sydney. My name is Rosemary Patterson, and I'll co-moderate this session and provide tech support if required. Jerome Carsnake, who manages the NRSPP, will be our primary moderator today. Welcome, Jerome.
Welcome. Thank you, Rosemary.
And there may be some people in our audience who might not know about the NRSPP and its purpose. Could you give them a short little bit of background?
It'd be my pleasure. For those who are unaware, the National Road Safety Partnership Program is an industry-led collaborative program, all focusing on improving workplace road safety. It brings together governments, industry, research groups, all focusing on key risks on how you can improve and do things that relate to workplace road safety. It's funded out of a range of government agencies and delivered out of ARB. And so this case study, this story we have today is exactly what the program is all about. We develop a case study, we do a webinar, and we get everyone to have the chance to really say and ask the questions on the details. So I'm really looking forward to this one, and I know Len will do a fantastic job in leading us through it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerome. And we'd like to make our audience aware that, as always, we are recording today's session and we'll be sure to share the footage with you on conclusion of the webinar. Webinars work best when they're interactive, so please type the questions into the chat box and we'll address them along the way. Our presenters today are from City of Sydney. We have Len Woodman and David Gull. From 1976, Len has been involved in driver training ranging from heavy military vehicles to commercial driving instruction, and he has spent over 20 years as a road safety professional. Len has delivered 10 submissions to Stay Safe, as well as implementing 50 road safety programs. Len would say that he's learnt a heap through his extensive travel throughout Europe, Asia and Africa. Welcome, Len.
Thank you.
And David Gull previously worked as a senior associate with Carney's Lawyers and joined the City of Sydney in 2012 as Parking Services Manager. The role involves managing a team of 8 and overseeing service and procurement contracts for the city's Parking Services Unit. David is currently leading a project to investigate and implement a ticketless on-street parking solution for the City of Sydney. And so we welcome David. And Len, over to you now.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, morning, evening, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you are around the country and possibly overseas. So the City of Sydney Fleet Services implementing a crash management strategy. The crash management strategy, the objective of which is to implement strategies that promote a zero crash culture from senior management right the way through to those that drive and operate our vehicles and machinery. We also use it to support and improve driver skills, behaviours and awareness through driver development and coaching programs. Also the key element in it is to promote pride in driving professionally, then people will do that job well. And to address the key causes and contributing factors that result in vehicle crashes, and to guide our business units with strategies and processes that minimise the vehicle crashes. You'll notice in the background there's also an eco-driving strategy, which is another document that really goes hand in hand with the crash management strategy. As many of you may be aware, the City of Sydney is very much up in front and leading with regards to caring for the environment. So we have to balance two things, that is ensuring that we've got a fleet that is safe and a fleet that is environmentally friendly. Why have we got a city fleet? Many people sort of talk to me and say, oh, the City of Sydney, you're really up there with regards to improving the environment, so why have you got vehicles on the road? Well, the City of Sydney, like any local government, has to provide local government services to residents, businesses, workers and visitors. In the City of Sydney, that is around about, on a busy summer's day, around about 1 million people visiting the city area. And if anything to go by this morning, there were 2 cruise liners in the harbour, so that could be another 5,000 people visiting central Sydney. So these numbers do swell, and sometimes they go down a little bit, but generally particularly this time of the year, coming up to New Year's Eve, there's a lot of people coming to see Sydney. So that works out around about 7,000 people per square kilometre, and we're providing all different services for these vehicles. If we look at the number of roads that we've got, the amount of roads, that's about 330 kilometres of roads that we've got to look after. We've got to travel through, most of our buildings of course are adjacent to roads, and we need to provide those services that are specifically there for people. And some of the services we do, gardens to keep, with so much dense inner city living, there's numerous gardens and parks that we have to maintain and keep to a high standard. People wishing to live in the inner city need places to go out and to relax, and we are, I believe, one of the leaders in making sure that the green space that we've got around is good for those people to go to and makes it worthwhile living in an inner city environment. Of course, we've got roads to repair, signs to maintain. We've got buildings coming up everywhere, so buildings to be inspected, whether they're new ones or modifications. Most important thing probably is garbage to collect. With an increasing residential population, the garbage collection is becoming more and more intense, more and more demanding on us. And of course there's the trees to trim and to look after and to maintain, so that we've got, you know, a green and pleasant city as well as an active, vibrant city. We've got meals to deliver, so in our city we have, with all that population, quite a few people who do need the service and the interaction with other people. We provide that with the Meals on Wheels service, many volunteers, and of course they've got a difficult job going around from one building to another delivering meals and keeping in contact with some of the people that need some of our assistance. Streets to sweep, that's particularly difficult with some of the narrow streets that we've got, and of course there's places to go, so we still have jobs to do and need to get from A to B to carry things and take things. Although generally we recommend that if possible people take alternative forms of transport, active forms of transport, and you can see in the upper picture there the parks, people have a number of bicycles with little trailers on, or they have the long cargo bikes, and they can take their equipment within reasonable distances from our depots. One of the advantages of having a relatively small area but with a high density of population. So where we can, we will use active forms of transport. And our general suggestion to people is when they go out, particularly those driving cars, if they don't know where they can legally park at the end of their journey, they might want to think about going by bicycle or public transport, or even walking. Our city is quite a small area. So we've got all these different things to do, and we then face a number of risks by being active and being out and about. Our largest vehicles are 23-ton garbage collection vehicles, and our smallest are Mitsubishi Miev's electric vehicles. The city is leading, I believe, with one of the largest fleets of electric vehicles. So we have quite a range of Nissan Leaf and Mitsubishi Miev vehicles. They are charged up overnight, and we use solar energy to offset that against the main grid. The fleet is allocated across the range. We have a number of different units. As you can see, their cleansing and waste by far have the largest number of vehicles. They're the ones who are out cleaning roads, picking up the garbage, making the city nice and clear. And they've got one of the busiest times in the year coming up soon, New Year's Eve, and you'll probably have seen in the newspaper how each year they can clear the streets overnight and have the city back running normally within 24 hours of major events. So we've got the people that maintain the roads, the signage, the footpaths, street furniture, etc. They sort of come in secondly, and then the people who look after the gardens and parks, city greening and leisure. So we can see we've got quite a few vehicles, 343 in all, and they're out working those streets. So we've probably got round about I think something like 17 cars per square kilometre, 17 vehicles per square kilometre if they're all out at any given time. So we've probably got the highest concentration of fleet vehicles in the city area. The only ones that might be greater than that might be Sydney buses during peak times. So with greater activities, there's always a potential for road-related trauma. Also, with so many vehicles out, there's obviously greater expenditure. We're responsible for public funds, and we don't look at things with regards to what the bottom line is. We look to things as how we are providing a service for the public, all those people that I mentioned earlier, and do that efficiently and safely. So there is a cost involved if we have any incidents. That does cost us money. It also costs us time off the road, and if we have specialised vehicles for a specialised particular job, if they're not available, then we have to find alternate means of completing those jobs to maintain our services. Some of the things that we do look at is, and particularly in the driver development side, whilst this all costs money, we learn from each incident and try to prevent it happening again through effective coaching, counselling and training. Then hopefully we do get a little bit of return from our investment. But some of the incidents, as you see there, can probably be avoided by more awareness, and that's the whole objective of the crash management strategy. Finally, one of the risks that we have is our reputation. We set examples when we're out driving around, so anybody that sees us driving our vehicles will quite often be looking at us to see what we do, whether we do something wrong, and if there's something that they believe we've done something wrong, of course complaints will come in. Thankfully not very many. Also, we set a reputation and we set examples with regards to road safety, so particularly speed and appropriate speed for conditions and obeying traffic signs and all that. That's all a very important part of our day-to-day training and assessment with drivers. At this stage, is there anyone like to ask me any questions relating to those first few slides?
Thanks for that, Len. And if anyone who has questions, please feel free to shoot them on through to us and we'll happily answer them of Len. So I guess this is a first question here for you, Len. How do you actually go about protecting, obviously the City of Sydney's got such a strong brand as an organisation. How do you set about making sure that people don't take advantage of that and try and lay blame where it may not be allocated to?
Yeah, that's a good one. That does happen, particularly with parked vehicles that get damaged. Some people are very quick to say, oh, it must be the garbage trucks going past. We do investigate everything that comes to us. Any complaints come to our central customer service area and it's logged. We follow up through each of the units to find out whether vehicles were in a location. And we will investigate. Even if necessary, I'll go out and inspect the damage to vehicles and see if that actually measures up to whether it could be one of our vehicles involved. That's a typical one. There will be some people that, let's say they might have been upset because one of our rangers might have given them a parking ticket a couple of days beforehand. So they'll be there very, very much looking at anybody that's got City of Sydney over the side. But generally, drivers are well aware of the fact that once they're out in a vehicle with City of Sydney on the side, are ambassadors of the city, and we do have very, very few comebacks or complaints relating to the behaviour and to whether they keep to the rules or not.
Great, thanks you, Len. We've got some questions that are saying to come through, and look, Len, if I ask you a couple and they're going to be addressed later in your presentation, please feel free to make that sort of reference. So the first one here, we've got from Karen. What is the process with dealing with driver infringements, particularly speeding?
Okay, with driver infringements, if anyone that has an infringement notice has to report it to us. If they're found not to report it to us, then it's contravening their code of conduct. When we get any photographic evidence, for example speed cameras and safety cameras popping up at most locations now, most intersections around the city, obviously we find out who the vehicle has been signed out to at that given time, and we will get their details, obviously pass that on to the State Debt Recovery Office. The person will also be, we will talk with them and their team leader or manager to find out exactly what happened on that situation, why it occurred, and how they're going to prevent it happening in the future.
So now I guess the next question after that, building on that, is what happens if I get a repeat one or a third one?
Repeat offenders can end up with them being taken off driving, and if the driving is part of their core role, then it can obviously affect them with regards to pay and with their position. So once we get repeat offenders, and it's quite rare, then it would be an issue to take up with our workforce services, and if necessary, to discuss the program of training. There's a thing that I'll come up to later in this presentation about what we call returning drivers, drivers that have been off the road for any reason because of a number of incidents or number of offences, and when they've sort of done their time not driving, we obviously during that period of time will be retraining them or mentoring them.
All right, thanks, Len. And we've got a question here from Tom. Can you speak to street maintenance, paving, for example, and bridge rehab? Is the city responsible for such upkeep?
Sorry?
Can you speak to street maintenance, paving, for example, and bridge rehab? Is the city responsible for such upkeep as well?
There are areas where the city is responsible through our construction people. If you think about what we do and what the role of the crash management strategy is, we are actually also implementing the safe system approach to road safety, so safer drivers, safer vehicles and safer roads. Now, if we notice any of our drivers notice any issues with the roads, particularly potholes, damage to the roads, issues at the intersections, for example, we will pass that information back to our traffic management people, and if it's something that's within our area that we're responsible for as a local road, that will be dealt with. If it's something to do with the RMS on one of the main roads, then information will be passed on to the RMS and hopefully followed up to make sure that things are rectified. And of course, if we've got drivers using the same roads regularly, if there is an issue and it's not corrected, they will get back to us and provide feedback.
Excellent. And just we've got one last question here before we get you to move on, and it's from Stuart. Can you describe to the listeners how the council's relationship with the workforce union is, and when it comes to taking action against a union member, driver, who is considered to have done the wrong thing?
Not had any problems with that at all. We meet with the unions and regularly. The meetings that we have, particularly in the busiest section, cleansing and waste, we have a meeting once a month with team leaders, union reps, and a member of the union. We haven't had any problem with the unions at all.
That's great to hear, Len.
I do talk to the union rep, and in fact, quite often the key union reps will come to me if there is a perceived issue with a driver, and we get it sorted out in conjunction with the workforce services, the unions and myself.
How do you achieve that relationship, Len? Any words of wisdom?
I suppose it's just getting to know people and talking about it and being sensible about it. The key thing is very much the same as workplace health and safety. The motor vehicles are a place of work for them, and we all want to remain safe. So if we have someone that is perhaps not keeping up to the standards, it's in everybody's benefit and everybody's interest to ensure that something is done about it.
Thanks, Len. All yours.
Okay, let's carry on. So why are we at risk? Well, with the number of people increasing in the city, there's greater demands. I mentioned before we need more park spaces for people that live in inner city close dwellings. We have an exposure to difficult situations, and I'll show you some slides on that in a few minutes. There's expectations by the public. There's the expectations that we keep all the things that we're responsible for up to a high standard, and that nowadays is relating to having even more and more complex equipment in order to do the job, because We find that new buildings come out, we've got to have vehicles that can get into underground basements to collect rubbish or to go and get work done. So all these things all add to the risk, and it's quite important that we have an awareness program and management program that controls all this, so that we've got people that are well trained and able to use that equipment and also don't get suffering from stress because of the greater demands on them. The City of Sydney, I believe, is, some people from other states might disagree. Anyone from overseas will probably say that traffic in some other major cities is worse, but in the City of Sydney we probably have the most difficult traffic conditions in Australia. Lots of traffic, lots of congestion, and all of our drivers have to drive through these conditions in order to do their job, and it's very important that they, again, do that in safety. But the conditions are really difficult. Even the back streets that all seem nice and open and very little traffic. Part of the benefits of the city is that people do make their laneways much more attractive and much nicer. That can sometimes give us a little bit of difficulty when we've got work to do in those roads and laneways. So you can imagine getting some of our vehicles through some of these streets is quite difficult, as you can see here. Our heavy vehicle drivers are, I would say, particularly skilled in getting through some of these laneways, and we get very few incidents now. There's been quite a dramatic reduction in the last 2 to 2.5, 3 years, even though they're going through these difficult conditions. We can, in some places, use smaller vehicles, but we've got to weigh up the fact that if we use smaller vehicles, we've probably got to do more trips. That means more exposure to risk, and sometimes the efficiencies of coming down to smaller vehicles is just really very difficult to actually achieve a good standard if we do so. So, for example, though, we can sometimes have situations where a team leader might have to go out in a ute to get down a laneway to pick up some garbage bins, because not even our smallish garbage collection vehicles can fit down there. And one of the things that you can see from here, as we get bigger vehicles, people buying larger four-wheel drive vehicles, it does tend to cause us a bit more problem. And we can't reduce the size of our vehicle even more because we take even less rubbish or equipment around. So that just, sorry, I've just gone on to another question. So if we want to, anyone want to catch up here for some that we missed earlier?
So how did you get those, like, the laneway those drivers have to go down is incredibly small.
Yep.
So what's the level of training? How long does it take to get a driver to that standard?
Okay, well, all of them have got to have the appropriate state license for the vehicle. In most cases, we get them trained up to heavy rigid vehicles. We don't have any combinations nowadays. They will go out for up to 2 weeks with a specific trainer, an advisor who works with them, particularly with the equipment, the compression cycles on the back, etc. A lot of that time is them getting practice. They are already qualified drivers, so we don't have learners going through there. They will go with and be guided by like a mentor for a short period of time, as I say, up to 2 weeks. And then I will go out and assess them on their day-to-day work, watching how they interact with other drivers, how they use their equipment, as well as drive the motor vehicle.
Please. And I've got a good question here from Frank. He's asking about, are these units, they function as I guess, as team units? How do you sort of develop that sort of camaraderie, if so?
Getting out and about. We're going through a program at the moment now, and we'll see that in the slide that comes up, that we assess or evaluate every driver once every 3 years. We also have up to 4 to 6 times a year with through toolbox talks, with doing a presentation, and other toolbox talks I also attend to talk with them about how things are going generally with their driving, crash statistics, and also any particular things that come up earlier this year with the new rules of giving 1 metre to cyclists. Every unit was talked to with regards to their obligations, the new rules and scenarios and how to deal with it. So it's getting out talking with people. People do tend to know me. I think a few weeks ago when we had our insurers here videoing some of our drivers driving around, and everyone as they came past was saying, "Oh, hi Len, hello Len," and one of the film crew said, "Oh, is there anybody that you don't know?" And that's the key thing, getting out and about.
Good job. And to give you a bit of an idea of the international people dialing in, we have another question here from Tom.
Yep.
Rubbish collection in New York City occurs at night due to daytime travel demand. Is it similar in Sydney's City Core?
Okay, well, we do a certain amount of garbage collection and street sweeping at night, but tends to be in the more industrial areas and around shop areas, because we do have quite a lot of residents and the noise can be quite restrictive. So we do a mixture throughout the night. We also have early starts and try to get it out of the way in the morning. We have more or less a 24-hour operation, 3 shifts. So that's 2 to 10, 10 to 6, and 6 to 2. They do various different types of garbage collection. There's also specific demands that happen from time to time from different people, different residents. Someone may have left a couple of mattresses out in the corner. We don't want that to sit there all day, so we'll send a small vehicle out, response truck, to go and collect it and get that cleared out the way. So we work through 24 hours, but we do vary it depending on the demands of the specific locality with regards to consideration for the residents.
I think it really shows the pride that you guys have in looking after your city.
We do.
So, Len, would you like to continue, please?
Yeah, certainly. Okay, so the crash management strategy in itself, what it's all about. The first thing is it provides us with a range of tools to effect long-lasting attitudinal changes. Now, we talk about attitudinal changes. I haven't put the word behaviour. We can change behaviour by bringing rules in. People will behave if there are rules in. People stop at red lights because there's a rule that says it. The attitudinal changes comes to where they actually decide and want to do the change, want to drive in a specific way. And one of the reasons I've been out recently with a lot of our really heavy vehicles is that we've got very professional drivers there, and I need to be supportive of them and respectful of their skills and their abilities, and to develop a professional approach so that they feel that they are doing a good job, they are skilled, and set an example to others. It also provides an action plan to track our progress. So as you can see, it's 2015 to 2017. So early next year, David Gallen and I will be looking at this crash management strategy, looking at what we've achieved, looking at what we need to probably focus on for the next following 2 years, see where there's anything we can change for the better, and take anything out that's superfluous and not really been effective. So those action plans are important to track the progress through the complete period of time of the strategy. What do we want to achieve? We want to achieve a safe system for fleet driving that promotes a zero crash culture through safer people, safer vehicles and safer roads. So you can see that that is related to the universally adopted safe system approach to road safety. We talk about zero crash culture. You probably, or any of the professionals there, will know about Vision Zero, and everybody is very keen on getting the Swedish approach to saying, well, no one should be penalised through death or serious injury because they made a mistake on the roads. Promoting a zero crash culture is only slightly different in that we want to totally reduce the costs of even minor incidents, and also demonstrate that a minor incident one day could be a major incident the next day, so learning from whatever mistakes people make. When I first started doing this 2.5, 3 years ago, people were saying, oh, going out in all those conditions, it's inevitable that we're going to have a crash. I've turned that around and said, well, you know, we've reduced the number of crashes dramatically. If it was inevitable that we were going to crash, we wouldn't get that reduction. So we've just got a little bit more work to do to keep it going down and down, just as we do in the general road safety sphere across the state and nationally. The other thing that we do look at is that we make it very clear to people that regardless of their job, as soon as they take control of a City of Sydney vehicle, in the eyes of the customers, so everybody out there that we've got to provide services for, we're seen as professional drivers. They won't look at someone driving a car and go, oh, there's a planner there, or oh, there's a health inspector there. They look at someone in our vehicle and say, oh, you know, they're driving for an organisation, that must be their job. Same with the garbage collectors. They're professional drivers. They probably are more professional in that they are out on the road for 6 hours a day compared to some of the smaller vehicles that people might only be out for an hour or so. So we are expected and must display an exemplary standard. No one can be perfect, but we do strive to get to the highest standard as possible. And the key thing that is seen on that is that people know that we've got City of Sydney on the vehicles, and that the vehicles have to be driven around and shown in a good light. Now I'll come on to something, accident, the question mark. I think one of the biggest effects that I've had, and it really only came to me when we were practicing this webinar last week, I have gone away from talking about accidents. Any professionals out there in road safety will know that crashes, collisions, incidents, more appropriate term. Accidents, they imply no one's at fault. Just happened. Couldn't have done anything about it. A crash says someone has made a mistake. Either done something wrong or they've forgotten to do something. Very rarely is it deliberate. But a crash occurs because of a set of circumstances, most of which could be controlled. So one of the key things that I think has made a change is constantly talking about the difference between accidents and crashes. We talk about crash reports, not accident reports anymore. We talk about incidents as opposed to near misses, etc., etc. So just by changing the word over the last few years and people getting used to it and constantly refreshing their memory on it, every time someone says accident, I actually correct them and say crash. It does have a mental effect of saying, well, I can do something about it, even if it's not my fault. So whenever an incident occurs and people are talked with afterwards, interviewed, we talk about how it could have been avoided, what situations arose. So even if it's someone else's fault, we talk about what could we do to have prevented that incident from actually happening. Next set of questions, please.
Certainly. So we've got one here from Stuart. What exists in the City of Sydney for there to be an inclusive collaboration between councils, driver education, etc., road planning sections, departments? Are they working in groups that look at common goals for the safe systems approach?
Yes, well, the City of Sydney has a number of teams, really. We have, let's take my side, fleet services aside. We have our own road safety officer, which was a position I was in for 19 years before I took this role up. So we have two road safety officers that work on the education and promotion of road safety generally throughout the city, covering everything from schools and kindergartens right the way through to low-risk driving. They also provide a certain amount of assistance with new drivers, but a lot of it is promotional material relating to the issues of road safety, particularly in the City of Sydney, pedestrian and cyclist safety. We have a cycling development team that has been active for some 10 years. Again, I was part of that until I started with Fleet Services. Their role is to improve cycling facilities by putting in cycleways and awareness programs for cyclists, and I know that team gets out several times a week talking to cyclists about how to ride and move around safely in the city. We have our traffic management team of professional traffic engineers who are there to deal with all new road environments and maintaining the old system. And then of course we've got the people at the end of the construction people that get out there and do implement all the work. We all work together.
That's excellent to hear. So if you wanted to be an employee in cycle, sorry, if I was an employee for the City of Sydney and I wanted to cycle, can I just get on the bike and take off and do that?
No, you can't, because we really appreciate that there are some There's different ways of riding a bicycle. I'm a cyclist generally, as well as driving. I mix it all up, different vehicles, different bicycles. Now, we do have a fleet of bicycles, as you saw in that photograph. We've got people out in parks going out and doing work on bicycles. We've got people who go and do inspections on bicycles. Before anyone can use our fleet bicycles, they have to do a half-day training course, which is run by an organisation called Bikewise. I hope that doesn't sound as though I'm promoting them, but they have professionals in that have the skills are developed in the UK, where there's been a lot of emphasis on cycle training over the last 30 years. The Bikewise have also got experienced operators that have spent time in the Netherlands, the place where cycling is the biggest thing out. They have provided a very effective course, both for the public, for children, but also for our staff. So any of our staff doing wishing to ride a bike for work purposes, they do a half-day riding course. Now, I'm also promoting that, funny enough, because I believe that if someone, even if they only ride the bicycle for the cycling course, they really do get an insight of what it's like to be a vulnerable road user. And that really gives them a lot of good information and makes them more aware of vulnerable road users when they're driving motor vehicles, particularly the trucks.
Right, thanks, Len. And we actually have a great webinar we did with Amy Gillett's Foundation, if people want to be directed to that. So I'll combine two questions now from Karen and Peter. Is the crash management document available online for us to view? And the second,
I believe, Jerome, that you've got it on your in your library.
We do. So it's linked to the case study, Karen. And the other one is...
Yep. And there's also, don't forget, the Low Risk and Eco Driving Handbook.
Oh, there is indeed. We'll be touching on that all in a tick, I believe.
Yep.
The other question, the crash management strategy and the eco driving strategy go hand in hand. Why?
If anybody that's really looked into driver training and driver behaviour will find that generally someone who drives smoothly, comfortably for the passengers, is aware of their surroundings, drives in a way that they prepare themselves using observation, anticipation, and giving themselves time to react and other people time to react. They tend to do it in a way that is eco-friendly. Being gentle on the gas pedal, being gentle on the brakes, and using a vehicle to get from A to B safely and efficiently, rather than as a symbol of charging around. And sometimes we see people just thinking they can make progress by going at high speeds, getting stopped at traffic lights, held up in traffic lanes. The full answer to that could be quite lengthy, but basically the two go hand in hand. Smooth, comfortable driving tends to relate to less use of fuel. Less use of fuel means that the environment is protected a little bit.
Right. Question here from Tom. Can you give us an idea of how folks, what you're speaking about, and how many City of Sydney employees routinely perform their work duties requiring travel?
Well, we have roughly 1,900 staff. We have about 1,200 of those are authorised drivers. Around about 600, 700 would be routinely using motor vehicles. So that would be in our garbage and waste services, our construction services, people moving plant around. We've got the rangers, a certain number of those are out in motor vehicles where they can't walk or ride around. Then we have a number of other staff that need a motor vehicle to pick up things such as those that work in the parking meter services. They may have to go and pick up parking meters and the equipment relating to that. So they need to be out and about in the vehicles. So around about 700 people are driving on a regular basis. Probably another 300 are driving probably 3 to 4 times a week for periods up to 2 hours.
Excellent. So
they actually, sorry, just want to add on to that.
And then we can move on if that's right, Len.
Okay, and we move on?
Yep.
Okay. Tools and strategies, the way ahead in the crash management strategy. The biggest tool that we've got at the moment is the Low Risk and Eco Driving Handbook, which was worked on and released in September. And It's going out to every person who drives. It's also linked in with an initial training session to tell people what it's all about, why they need to use it, and how they can use it. It was actually, or is a development of the 2007 version called the Safe Driving Handbook, which was put together by SSROC, the Southern region of councillors. So there was a number of councillors got together and put the Safe Driving Handbook together. In 2007 we decided that it did need development and also need to cover eco-driving as well as low-risk driving, which is a better terminology than safe driving. Driving in a low-risk way prevents not just causing crashes but being involved in crashes. So that's our key tool at the moment, and it goes hand in hand with presentations that are gradually getting through the 1,200 drivers that we have. Operational guidance, we have a fleet management strategy and a motor vehicle policy and procedure documents. They set out what vehicles we buy, why we buy them, and looking for what is required of a new vehicle. The procedure is how they're used and what people are allowed to do with their vehicles. They link in closely with the fleet management strategy, and that also links with the crash management strategy and the eco-driving strategy. Now we do have a lot of strategies and various things. We will be looking at bringing some of these together next year and seeing if we can amalgamate a few of these documents to make it a much easier bundle of equipment available to us. Maintaining standards, looking at low-risk eco-driving, and not just in the classroom but getting out and, as I said, assessing people on a 3-yearly basis, and you'll see why in a minute. Using the safe system approach so that people learn, all our drivers learn about the safe system, learn about the 3 elements, the drivers, the vehicles and the roads. License upgrades. Whilst we do get people come in to various units and they need a higher grade license for heavy vehicles particularly, or buses, whilst we get some that are already licensed, those that come in and work through the process do get the opportunity to go and get trained for a higher level of license. As we said before, they'll go out and get their license, particularly heavy rigid, and then come back and have some gain some experience with a mentor for a period of time going around the difficult city environments we have. The returning driver procedure, we talked about what happens if someone is a recidivist offender. If they commit a number of offences or they have a number of incidents, we will start to look at the process. So we do analyse their crash report from the person that's involved, look at who's at fault, work out what we need to do, look at all the different elements and decide whether driver coaching is required. We decide what is needed to get them back on the road. Now, we do value our drivers, and thankfully we don't have too many repeat offenders because we get into a lot of this quite early now. Because if we've got someone who we've had trained and has the skills to get through all those little laneways and drive around, we really want them to be driving, but they've got to be driving safely. So we put every effort we can into it. We also sometimes we look at their behaviour and suggest that they have counselling, which is available through the workplace, to see if that can assist them, because quite often if someone has an issue with their driving, it may not be that the driving itself is the problem. It may be external pressures, it may be home life, it may be anything from depression to other issues that is affecting their driving standard, and we will look at that and wherever possible give as much assistance and help to our staff to keep them driving where they're of value to us. I said before that we talked about assessing people's driving every 3 years. That's come from our insurers. We have, Lumley, our insurers, have got a very good manual which I've taken bits out of for safe fleet operations, and one of the best comments they've got in that is experience has shown drivers only need in-vehicle driver training about every 3 to 4 years if regular in-house training is provided through toolbox talks and presentations, and for example the implementation of the low risk and eco driving handbook. So that's really looking at many of you that have been in road safety for many years will know the Swedish telecom exercise that was done in the 90s where they got 3 large groups of people. One group received advanced driver training, one received in-house talking sessions in small groups, and there was obviously a control group, and they found that the ones that succeeded mostly were those people that sat down and talked about their driving experiences and talked about being aware of what they do when they go out. And it also comes back to good driving reduces the chances of causing a crash. There are many good drivers out there, contrary to a lot of people saying, oh, look at, you know, it's a jungle out there. Many people drive well, and that reduces the chances of causing a crash, but low-risk driving increases the chance of avoiding a crash regardless of who was at fault. We've got a number of checks and balances through the crash management strategy. Of course, drivers are license checks from new beginners who join us. They have to go through an authorization procedure, and we check off their driving license, make sure it's valid. They have to sign to say that it's still a valid license, and that they have the appropriate licenses. We need to see that before we take them out and let them drive our vehicles. New drivers, particularly in the heavy fleet, there's an induction process and their driving competencies assessed. The driver competencies, we base that on standard training, but based on training.gov.au guidelines. And if you look up anybody that isn't aware of training.gov.au, please look it up. The guidelines of competencies they have is enormous, from everything from driving cars to eco-driving to forklift trucks and B-doubles if necessary. So the competencies are all there. That's the general expectations of the national government on us as drivers and plant operators. Training, keeping up to date. So again, through the workplace training, we're starting on a series of video clips on how to do things. That's been quite an interesting comment or request from a number of the presentations that I've done. If we can have short video clips on our intranet internally, people can look up things at specific locations and get advice on how to handle certain driving situations. So I'm going out regularly now in motor vehicles with an inside camera, videoing clips. We've done one recently on how to pass a cyclist, which will be available probably to you, Jerome, soon. It will be put onto your website. So working with others, the question I had before is, do we work together with other units? Well, the answer, as I said before, yes. We've got all different units that we work with, not just for the driver education or driver awareness, but also for the services they can help us providing safer roads, a safer environment. Our CityNet, we have an internal, what we call CityNet. That's our in-house online training, and we're developing programs for that. Each member of staff at the City of Sydney, like probably most other organisations, has a performance review each year with a 6-month sort of assessment halfway through the year. We are including now the driving ability and driving skills as part of the performance reviews. Measurement and benchmarking. One of the things I'm going to say about the National Road Safety Partnership Program is it has provided a wealth of information. I used to have to, I think they call it, troll through the websites to try and find information for what other people are doing, to see what I can copy and use to our advantage. The website that Jerome's put together is just fantastic. There's everything there that anybody needs. Sometimes the only thing is that you can spend all day reading through everything that's on there because it's so interesting. So that allows us also to compare against others. So I was particularly keen and excited in working with Jerome's team in looking at the case study. They asked a lot of questions and did a lot of research into what we're doing, followed up on things, looked at our crash data. All those sort of things were really, really good. The crash data, when I worked as a road safety officer, we used to get the crash data every year, about a year behind, so it was difficult to actually work out where we'd done well and where we needed to pick our game up on. We, through Lumley's, get crash data every month, and I can see on a monthly basis whether a particular unit has had some crashes or we've had to claim for particular things. So we've constantly got that data which I can refer to. I can refer to the team leaders and managers and also to the individuals involved because they're all mentioned on it. So getting all this information is really important so we can see where we're going. It's very difficult to benchmark an urban council though with the conditions and the variety of vehicles, so we couldn't really compare ourselves to say one of the large transport fleets. So we're looking for more local government organisations to join the NRSPP so we can all compare ourselves and share information. The crash claims, this is what we got at the end of the last sort of insurance year, which finished last March, showed quite a dramatic improvement. I think this is because we've come along and started to do something. I'm really hoping that it continues down that, but I think, like a lot of us will know, it will start to taper off, and then there's going to be probably more effort required to maintain a downward trend. It's going to get harder work as it gets lower and lower. But presenting this information and the costs to our staff who drive makes them proud of the fact that they're part of that. And also there's a little bit of the fear factor that they don't want to be involved in serious crashes if they can help it, because that could turn those graphs up the other way very quickly if we had any serious incidents. So it's putting a fair bit of responsibility onto the drivers, but that's something that is generally welcomed. So crashes by fault have also been dropping down. One of the things that we do, any organisation suffers from, is the single vehicle incidents and also being at fault. Again, that relates back to our risk with our reputation. We're seeing the at fault crashes go down as quickly as the third party responsibility crashes. I'd like to sort of try and make that disappear in the future if I could, but that's a bit like looking at the Vision Zero. The city takes the information, we look at the different types of crashes that have been involved or we've been involved in to see if we can eradicate some of the situations and improve it in the future. The other thing that we've got that's not shown on here is each individual unit. We can break down the numbers of crashes and talk to their managers and staff individually about making specific reductions by unit. One of the things that we do have, which is very strong, is support right the way from the top. We recently have a new director that covers our whole division, which is by far the largest with regards to motor vehicles. One of the first things he asked me when he met me was, when am I going to take him out for a driver assessment? David, who's sitting next to me and is the executive manager at the moment, was assessed some months ago, so that went very well. So management right the way down, we've had a number, the manager of garbage services was the first of all his drivers to go out in a garbage truck, which he doesn't normally drive on a day-to-day basis, but he set an example there. We had the same in our construction services where the team leader and managers went out first and the other staff then obviously volunteered to come out soon after. So it's very important we've got those hierarchy supporting us, but for anybody that has had any experience in the military, it's all very well all the senior staff supporting. What's really key to it all is making sure that the team leaders, the first level of management supports it. Because if you've had any military experience, you know it's the corporals and the lance corporals that run wars, that do everything, and if they tell or request their guys to do something, it'll be done. So if we've got a team leader or just a junior manager as not agreeing with us, it will be a very negative effect. We've got to have them on side more than anybody else and follow right the way through to the hierarchy. So that more or less concludes my presentation, the crash management strategy. Perhaps I can come back and talk about the eco-driving strategy next year, because I've enjoyed this, talking with everybody. As Jerome said, this is available. I'm going to just go on to the next questions and the final few questions, if we can have that, Jerome.
Awesome. We have a pile here, thank you. You talk about, and this one I really like from Karen, by the way, you talk about council drivers setting an example. Have you had any feedback as to whether drivers take this example into their own environments, e.g. driving on holiday or to the shops?
The drivers themselves in their own driving, we've had comments, and one of the things that I do is I don't exclude from any of the presentations. In fact, I encourage managers to allow those that don't drive council vehicles, that drive their own vehicles, to come as part of that session. The reason being is that if we can perhaps prevent an incident occurring to even a member of staff at a weekend in their own vehicle, if, for example, they were involved in a crash and they can't front up for work, we've got obviously a staff issue. So we really need to, at least morally, look after all of our staff, regardless of whether they drive for work or only just for themselves. With regards to the effect that our vehicles might have being driven around on others, about a year ago, I do have, from my road safety officer days, quite a few colleagues in the police, and a comment was made to me by one of the police officers that oversees the crash management centre. They turned around and said, "Oh, you know, I've seen your guys driving around. They're driving, you know, very rarely are they, you know, doing anything wrong." He said, "You know, we very rarely would ever." He said, "I don't even know whether we've pulled any over, but if they're travelling down the street, a 40k speed limit street, at no more than 40k, then all the people following have to." So there's the sort of effect of it being safer for others because we're setting the pace, which I think we're doing across the board, and hopefully we will find ways of keeping that going.
Right, thanks, Len. Got a good question here from Chris. What does the low-risk driving handbook cover? What are the key topics?
The key topics here in the low risk is looking at the safe system approach to road safety, looking at you as a driver, your responsibilities, and then there's a number of different little bits of advice. Recently we did win an award from Lumley's, and one of the things is they looked at the low risk and eco driving handbook and said it wasn't a set of procedures or instructions, it was advice based on experienced drivers, and we did get that sort of feedback. So there's everything in there that relates to someone driving a City of Sydney vehicle. So responsibilities with regards to alcohol and drugs, responsibilities with regards to speed, responsibilities with regards to cyclists and other vulnerable road users, which are one of the most important things to us in the city. So the best thing might be is to download it and have a look. And you can, there's my details in it, so then anybody that wants to get back to me and talk about it, be great. I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent, thanks, Len. Is there, this one's from Stuart, is there a City of Sydney strategy or plan for introducing fleet telematics in the near future?
Sorry?
Is there a City of Sydney strategy or plan for introducing fleet telematics into the future?
Telematics, yes, we're looking at bringing some of the initial parts of that in. Well, I've been looking at several that are available around the world. We've been discussing that. We will be bringing in GPS systems for our all our vehicles very soon, in the next year or so, in the next budget. We have to look at whether what it's going to actually provide for us. Because we work in a very small area and we have short distances to travel, we may not have the same requirements as, for example, a fleet that operates long distances, say trucks going from Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to Brisbane and things like that. So there are a lot of variations that we need to look at. We've had, last year we had someone come to us with a package, and it really didn't suit our sort of short stop-start situations. For example, garbage collection. The vehicles are going short distances, stopping short distances, starting. So we have to look at all that and make sure that the package covers what we want and it's going to be of value to us. So we haven't decided anything yet, but we are looking into it for the future.
Right, thank you. The last question, because I know we're just about out of time, and for those who haven't answered questions, we'll email them to Len and ask him to follow up. And just a personal note, Len, thank you very much for the kind words as well.
Thank you very much, Jerome.
So here we go. So here's a question from Karen. Do the waste drivers have job and knock? in the terms of this can have risk as drivers do the job quicker so they can knock off quicker?
No, a lot of that was the old-fashioned sort of approach, is come in early, do it by run, and off you go. Now the expectation is to work the full day. Now that also does help in that those that have been doing runs before in short periods of time, there's obviously an excess, and that can cover some of the growth in population we've got. But the key thing is, and the overarching phrase is, that you never should be in a rush. And when drivers are spotted, perhaps driving in a rush, not necessarily even too fast, but that we might have to have a word with them.
Wonderful, thank you, Len. And just a quick FYI from Tom over in the US. Keep an eye on the New York City Connected Vehicle Pilot Project managed by New York City Department of Transport. There may be some interesting technology-based solutions produced there. So just an FYI.
I've actually saw something about that the other day, so yes, I'll be interested in looking at that.
Awesome. Maybe I'll have a chat with Tom, and we might be able to draw some information to a webinar for that. So thank you everyone today for being part of this and the fantastic questions. Over to you, Rosemary.
Just finish off. There's information and there's my details there.
Awesome. Thank you, Len. Thank you to Jerome for fielding the questions and facilitating so well. And thank you to our awesome audience. We'd like to know that you can give us some feedback, so please stay on the line and fill out the survey. That will help our webinars improve for the future. But Len, what a great webinar. Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Thank you.